Can't wait for the next episode to drop? Be one of the first to listen to Obscura, a true crime podcast, a day early, only on Himalaya. Himalaya is a brand new podcast app where you can find every single podcast you love. Whether you're a podcaster or a fan, Himalaya has got your back. Discover personally curated playlists and show your favorite podcasters some love with Himalaya's tip jar. It's free, it's the easiest to use, and they're adding cool new features every day. Go to your app store, download Himalaya, that's Himalaya, and don't forget to follow Obscura once you're there.
The following audio may contain graphic descriptions of violence or audio clips of real-life distressing moments. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Obscura, where we shine a light on the dark.
Welcome, listener. I'm glad you're here. Take a seat, next to the fire. Before we get started, I want to give a special mention to members of the Patreon. I usually save this for the end, but I don't really want to allude to the subject of this case. Let's let things come together for you as you listen. Back to the Patreon. You've all been coming through lately, and I can't overstate how much it helps the production of the show. We're a team of 3 now, so every little bit helps. If you're not a patron, please consider. Even $1 helps. And if you don't mind the hard stuff, for just $5, you can become a member of Black Label. Now, let's get on with it. Level 1. Underwear Thief. Some people consider underwear to be a deeply personal matter, keeping it hidden beneath pants, skirts, dresses, or shorts. Others are less secretive about what is covered by their outerwear, allowing pants to sag, often exposing boxer shorts. Occasionally, G-string panty straps are pulled up over hips as a fashion statement of sorts. On the HBO series The Sopranos, Tony Soprano was known to regularly walk to the end of his driveway in an open bathrobe, undershirt, and boxers. Some people are just less modest than others. There's nothing wrong with either type of person. How a person chooses to wear or not wear their underthings is their own business. But while diversity of undergarment concealment exists across all genders, generally speaking, women aren't as liberal with the details of what lies beneath. According to the thesaurus, a synonym for women's undergarment is the word unmentionables. This suggests that some people don't even want to hear the word panties spoken aloud. Whatever someone's stance on underwear, it's important to respect their boundaries. When we hear about Angela McCanney of Ottawa, Ontario, and her story of underwear robbery, our first instinct might be to chuckle and mutter, "What the hell?" We're not really considering the personal nature of such a crime. Someone broke into her home on 2 consecutive days. The robber stole every single piece of women's underwear in the house. These may well have been extremely personal clothing items she hadn't considered showing anyone. Certainly not to the as yet unidentified burglar. Angela was violated. Sure, no one got physically hurt, but her own safety is now a concern to her where it hadn't been before. Apparently, someone can easily get into her home. Maybe next time, they won't just take the panties. Furthermore, who's to say Angela only owned cheap underwear? Sure, everyone grabs a 6-pack of Hanes from Walmart on occasion, but many people only buy their panties from stores like Victoria's Secret. Pretty underwear isn't cheap, everyone knows this. The people who wear it and the people who buy it for others as gifts. A bra alone can run $60 at Victoria's Secret. Her safety was in jeopardy, Her privacy was violated. It may well have been embarrassing for her. It was almost certainly traumatic to realize someone had broken into her home. To top it off, she had been robbed of potentially expensive personal property that she likely worked hard to afford. The headline itself may pluck a chuckle at first glance, but the crime itself is anything but funny. Even still, despite an explanation of why this crime was more severe than it may initially seem, some will still find it to be worth a little more than a shrug. With that in mind, it should be noted that the town of Tweed, Ontario, has previously reported similar burglaries. The first of the Tweed fetish break-ins occurred in September of 2007. It's now May 2008, and the number of Tweed reports has grown to 22. This is also the same month Ottawa residents like Angela McCanny are reporting similar break-ins. Police in Tweed and Ontario are both taking the break-ins seriously, but independent of one another. These waves of underwear theft are assumed to be the work of two separate panty bandits. Despite similarities, there doesn't seem to be any dots to connect between the two locations. As October arrives, reports of these fetish break-ins in Ottawa now total 15. 15 reported burglaries in 5 months is a problem. A big one. Keep in mind, these are only the reported break-ins. Some suspect a large number of these incidents are unreported out of shame, embarrassment, or the thought that the police won't take a case of missing underwear seriously. No one wants to be the laughingstock of a police station. To make matters worse, police are reasonably sure that some victims aren't even aware that their homes have been broken into, and thus are not reporting. There's simply no telling how many times this has happened since September 2007. On Halloween night in 2008, Ottawa police issue a press release. It warns residents of a burglar who is breaking into Ottawa homes and taking women's underwear. Years later, a report from the Star will detail the fact that the Ottawa police had a solid suspect at one point. Initially, police had not been too concerned. The burglar was careful to ensure no one was home when he struck, and very few fetish burglars graduate to sexual assault. But police did have their eye on a suspect. For months, they conducted sporadic surveillance on a man who had been charged with a sex offense in the past. He lived close to the middle-class suburb that was being raided. They called him in for questioning. One night, as officers from the surveillance team watched him, another panty raid went down. They knew they had the wrong guy. Despite the fact that most of these types of offenders never physically harm their victims, these crimes are growing more sinister as time passes. Panties are still going missing, but now so are sex toys. Worse yet, malicious notes are being purposely left for violated residents to find later. Level 2. Sadist, torturer. It's summertime. 8 months have passed since the 2008 Halloween press release from Ottawa police. Doesn't seem to have helped. There are now a combined 58 reported break-ins from the fetish burglar in the cities of Tweed and Ottawa. No major leads, no signs of the perpetrator slowing down. But autumn brings some optimism to the case. Along with the arrival of beautiful orange and red foliage, so comes another suspect. Ottawa police are questioning a man by the name of Larry Jones. It's a light at the end of the tunnel, at least for the moment. Investigators watch as that light is quickly eclipsed by the fact that once again, they have the wrong guy. Larry is vehemently denying the accusations and, according to a report from the Star, is sent home as the elusive fetish burglar continues his sickening hobby. They searched a cottage belonging to Larry Jones. They were looking for bras, underwear, cameras, and pornographic pictures. Jones, who called himself the mayor of Cozy Cove, was taken to the station and interrogated for nearly 4 hours. They searched everything and didn't find a thing. Nothing. I told them they had the wrong house and the wrong guy to begin with. Of course, they wouldn't believe me. Jones was eventually sent home. The burglaries continued. October 2009 also marks the 48th birthday of Ann Marson Cook. She's a music teacher by day and is getting ready to attend a party in her honor. Before going out for a sure-to-be-fun evening, Ann heads home to change clothes. Upon arriving to her farmhouse, located off Highway 37, Ann is perturbed to realize she's been the victim of a robbery. Most notably, she spots an open drawer in her bedroom, which normally contains sex toys. Now it's empty. Ann isn't sure how to handle this situation. The only thing she can report missing is a couple of women's sex toys, and that seems like an awkward thing to discuss with a police officer. She calls a neighbor who comes over to the farmhouse and helps Ann make sure all the entries are secure. Inside the farmhouse, the two neighbors discuss whether or not it would be prudent to call the police. Ultimately, they both declare it a futile endeavor, as a couple of missing dildos would likely be nothing more than a joke to the local police department. Ann decides to sleep at her neighbor's house as a precautionary measure. Morning comes, and Ann is beginning to feel better. She returns home to the farmhouse, ready to shake off this whole ordeal, move on with her life. It was probably just a random weirdo taking advantage of a door she forgot to lock. Her resolve crumbles when she enters the home to realize she's been robbed once again. This time, every pair of underwear she owns has been taken, which is particularly confusing, considering the fact that Ann and her neighbor made certain every door and window was locked. The house was secure. No one could get in without breaking something. There was no signs of forced entry. After a few moments, the screen of her computer catches her eye. Displayed in an open Word document, typed by the intruder who was still hiding inside Ann's home the previous day while she discussed calling the police with her neighbor. He made sure she still understood this in the message, which reads, "Go ahead, phone the police. I'll tell the judge about your really big dildos." Now she is beyond terrified and ready to report the break-in. According to the Star, the burglar, the message indicated, had been in the house when she came home to change her clothes and listened in on her discussion with the neighbor. Marson Cook reported the break-in to Belleville police, who sent an indent team to the farmhouse. There wasn't much evidence to collect. Police found half a fingerprint that could be of interest. The police didn't seem to know anything about the events that had been going on in Tweed, short drive north of the farmhouse, in OPP territory. "As soon as I knew it was somebody pretty weird, it was a frightening thing," says Marson Cook. "I knew somebody was out for me. It was very personal." It's clear this is more than just a panty burglar. Whoever is committing these sick break-ins is a dangerous person. Anyone still threatening the threat level of this active criminal should sit down and talk with Lori Mascotti. In her interview with McLean's, Lori details her own encounter with the criminal. Lori Mascotti watches the same two television programs before bed: Law and Order at 11 p.m. and Without a Trace at midnight. On that Tuesday evening last September, she followed her typical routine, curling up on the living room couch with an apple, the remote control, and one of her daughter's old Barbie blankets. Within 15 minutes, she was fast asleep. "It was a busy day," she says now, 1 year later. "I spent most of it cleaning, bringing in pots from the yard, rearranging furniture in the basement. I was exhausted." When she woke up in the wee hours of Wednesday morning, Mascotti remembers two specific things: hearing the theme song for the final credits of Without a Trace, and being smothered under her blanket as someone on the other side delivered punch after punch to her face. In those first few seconds, the 46-year-old was so disoriented and short of breath that she assumed that the house was on fire, and that thick smoke had filled her eyes and lungs. She soon realized the terrifying truth. "Shh," said the intruder, in between blows to the head. "I need you to be quiet." What transpired over the next 3.5 hours was pure terror. Home alone, Mascotti was blindfolded, shackled, stripped naked with the sharp edge of a knife, and forced to pose for dozens of unthinkable photographs, before the stranger in her house finally fled. Every time he ordered her to sit this way or lean that way, his threat was the same. "Don't make me make you." "I thought he was going to kill me at any given moment," she says. "It was just like a horror movie, and I didn't know what was going to happen in the next scene." Level 3. Murderer. The day is November 25th, 2009. Darkness has officially fallen across Brighton, Ontario. At 0.9 degrees Celsius, it's a chilly night. In the United States, we'd call that 33 degrees Fahrenheit. Either way you measure it, the temperature tonight is about average for this time of year in Brighton. Cold, but bearable. This small town is home to some 11,000 residents, many of them elderly retirees in search of a quiet place to live. In Brighton, they'll find exactly what they're looking for. This is a friendly area filled with welcoming locals. Brighton is clean, shamelessly wholesome, and a great place to do some bird watching, if you're into that sort of thing. Perhaps boring is the best descriptor for such a town for anyone under the age of 60. The closest thing to excitement found here is during the months of September, when the annual Apple Fest kicks off. Apple Fest includes a parade, arts and crafts, hay rides, car shows, and of course, local food. Fun? Maybe for some people, but it's not exactly Woodstock. It hasn't been a particularly eventful November in Canada. Mike Schreiner was recently selected as the new leader of Ontario's Green Party. Professional wrestler Adam T. Dykes, better known as Adam Firestorm, sadly passed away in apparent suicide. The Montreal Alouettes are about to take on the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. If they win, it will be their 6th Grey Cup in the Canadian Football League. Apart from that, there really isn't much to report. Mary France Camus is pacing around her bedroom after recently returning from a trip. She's having a drawn-out television conversation. How long can she possibly keep yammering? Most Brighton residents are in bed by now. It's almost 11 p.m. Doesn't she care about the time? Mary is blatantly defying the concept of bedtime, opting to stay up late while rambling about who knows what to God knows who. She has short brown hair and is an average-sized 38-year-old woman. Mary works as a military flight attendant for the Canadian Armed Forces and lives alone with her 2 cats. A recent trip wasn't as noteworthy as what she returned home to, or more appropriately, what she came home to find missing. Underwear. Upon her return, it quickly became obvious that someone had gone into her home and, in her absence, rummaged the underwear drawer. She didn't even need to ask who. It was almost certainly her boyfriend. She called him out on this utter invasion of privacy, but of course, he denied it. Anyone would. Apart from being a clear boundary violation, this was an embarrassing thing to stand accused from. As such, Mary's boyfriend swore up and down he hadn't touched her underwear drawer. She knew better. Who else would it have been? Her fervent conversing is finally starting to wind down, and she bids adieu to whomever was on the other end of the receiver. It took long enough. Maybe now she'll finally go to bed. Before she can turn in, however, she has to hunt down one of her cats. He's wandered off someplace and she simply won't be able to sleep. She's not certain her beloved pet is safe and sound. Now she's searching all around the home, calling out for her furry friend, but receiving no response. This is starting to become worrisome. A light bulb illuminates over her head and it occurs to her that the cat probably snuck off downstairs. Mary descends the stairs and then looks around her basement for the little stowaway. So predictable. Of course, he's right there. The cat, as predicted, is standing right in the middle of the basement floor, staring at the wall. Mary walks over to pick the cat up and bring him back upstairs where he belongs. As she crosses the floor, she notices the cat isn't staring at the wall aimlessly. He's clearly fixated on something. Cats are like that. Let a bug get into the house and catch the attention of your cat. Observe how the animal glares at the intruding pest. Pure obsession, unmistakable focus, and God help any insect that comes within pouncing distance of a cat. Naturally, Mary wonders what on earth has our furry friend so fascinated. So, she peers across the basement in the same direction as the cat, and finally sees the man hiding behind the furnace. This is not right. There should not be a man anywhere in the home, but there sure as hell shouldn't be a man in the basement, hiding behind a furnace. This has got to be some kind of bad joke or tasteless prank. The scene is just too cliché. He's even wearing a ski mask. Things like this only happens in movies. Then again, sometimes life imitates art. Perhaps this man behind the furnace has seen intruders and bank robbers wearing ski masks in movies. He just assumes this type of facial concealment is common practice. On the other hand, it's also possible the movies just so happen to get this one detail right. Come to think of it, a ski mask is a pretty efficient and effective way of concealing one's identity. Whatever the case, that's all becoming irrelevant, because the man behind the furnace is now the man walking across the floor. It so appears he's no longer interested in hiding his presence. Contrarily, he's making a beeline right towards the 38-year-old military flight attendant. Things are beginning to make more sense now, but unfortunately, not every epiphany is accompanied by relief. The answer to who has been rummaging the underwear drawer is now in plain sight and clear as day. Mary owes her boyfriend an apology. On the other hand, the man walking across the floor is proving himself more than just some pathetic panty snatcher. In fact, he's currently giving Mary the impression that he's outright dangerous. Maybe he's just here to rob her. She's probably going to be assaulted, but she can survive an assault. She's tough. He does seem to have a fetish for breaking into homes and stealing undergarments, so Mary must mentally prepare herself for the possibility that the man walking across the floor may also rape her. She'll fight for all she's worth before she lets that happen, but even if he overpowers her, and he very well may, she'll survive. These kind of things are horrible, but they do happen, and victims do still have their lives when all is said and done. This is quite likely going to be the worst experience of Mary's life, but she's going to get through it. She has to. He has no reason to kill her. She hasn't seen his face. If he gets what he wants, he'll leave. It's going to take a lot of time and healing on Mary's part before things return to normal. Moreover, this is going to be painful, both physically and emotionally. Hopefully, he'll leave the cats alone. There would be no reason to harm them. Cats pose no threat to a man of his size. A large dog, maybe, but not two cats. Something deeply traumatic is about to happen. And yes, it's going to be devastating. But it will not be her undoing. She's strong. She can make it through this. Of course, this is not how things are happening in real time. Thoughts occur infinitely faster than words can be written or spoken. Feelings, intuitions, realizations, epiphanies, such experiences can arise instantly, yet require an entire novel to properly convey through language. The truth of it all, upon being discovered, the man hiding behind the furnace becomes the man walking across the floor in a matter of seconds. Just as quickly, the man crosses the basement floor, and Mary tries to run, but trips over a duffel bag and falls backwards. The man beats Mary with a flashlight over and over until she's subdued. There's blood on the floor. They both remain in the basement, where Mary's wrists are bound and tied to a steel post. She's stripped naked, her mouth is duct taped, and the man in the ski mask begins taking photos of her. 8 days prior, he parked his vehicle in a nearby field and broke into Mary's home. He was able to discern that she lived alone and also helped himself to her undergarments, and took 18 photos of himself while wearing her panties, lingerie, bathing suits, and playing with her sex toys. Now subdued, bound, duct-taped, and humiliated, one might expect Mary to be broken and compliant. But she's not. The man in the ski mask carries her to the bedroom and rapes her repeatedly, filming much of the attack to keep for himself. This is true. But later, he'll reveal that Mary was quite aggressive. She fights as best as she can. She also pleads, begging him to have a heart, telling him she's been a good person all of her life and doesn't want to die. He tells her to shut up. The man covers Mary's nose and mouth with duct tape after hours of torment. Mary is strong, and indeed fighting with every bit of strength she possesses, but it isn't enough. There will be no time in healing, no getting through it, no apology to her boyfriend for assuming he was the intruder, no police report to file or pressure to testify against her attacker, and there will be no coming out of this traumatic event stronger for having survived it. Instead, there's the body of Mary France Camus, lifeless, after becoming a target, Colonel Russell Williams, one of her military superiors. Level 4. Famous Monster. On January 27, 2010, 27-year-old Jessica Lloyd sends a text message to a friend at 10:36 p.m. That's the last time anyone will ever hear from her. Authorities begin a major search for the missing woman. Russell Williams has already murdered Jessica, but not before raping and torturing her first. Williams is tired of simply stealing women's underwear. Photographing himself in the homes of his victims while wearing and masturbating in their undergarments is no longer enough to satisfy the 47-year-old Canadian Forces Air Command Colonel. He's moved on to objectifiement of his victims: sexual assault, rape, physical torture, and murder. No one suspects his guilt right now because he's a particularly revered and decorated military pilot. He has personally flown such prominent figures as Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Philip, and even the Prime Minister of Canada across the country. His wife, Mary, has no idea of his double life, nor do his neighbors, friends, or family. Russell Williams is confident that he won't be caught, and with good reason. Decorated military service people personally provide flights to the Queen of England are not prime suspects for cases involving panty-thieving sadistic murderers. Furthermore, his background gives virtually zero indication that he could be capable of committing such heinous crimes. Granted, his background is notably muddied. Russell Williams has lived in many places and changed his name 3 times. The Globe and Mail describes the complexity of Williams' background. He has been so many places and done so many things that he is a biographer's worst nightmare. Everyone knows of him, but few know him. Friends and family who agreed to be interviewed for the story say that, while his past may be complex, it contains no hint about the crimes. I've spent my career doing things right and avoiding things that were wrong, but here, I can't figure out what went wrong, said his stepfather, Jerry Sofka, a nuclear engineer who lives in Aix-en-Provence, France. Russell Williams was born in the Midlands region of England, but moved to Ontario, Canada at a young age. His parents divorced, which can be tough on a child. But there's no semblance of evidence that divorce can mitigate this level of depravity in a human being. Globe and Mail further expounds upon the complicated background of Williams following his move to Ontario town called Chalk Rivers and the dissolution of his parents' relationship. The 100-person village, which is home to Canada's premier nuclear research laboratory, was hiring experts, including Russell's father, David Williams. David and his wife, Nani, had another son, Harvey. The marriage soured and they divorced, but in the remote and frigid Upper Ottawa Valley, Miss Williams found love again and married Mr. Sofka in 1970. He got a new job with Ontario Hydro. Russell delivered the Globe and Mail and learned piano. But the home was merely a base. Mr. Sofka's nuclear expertise made him in demand around the globe. By 1979, the family was in South Korea. For Russell's final 2 years of high school, while his parents were in Asia, he boarded at UCC, where he went by the name Russ Sofka, and rubbed elbows with the scions of Canada's wealthiest and most prominent business families. As a prefect, he reported to his House Steward, Andrew Saxton, now a Conservative Member of Parliament for North Vancouver. It's not yet clear when he reverted to the name Williams. Because of the name change, his former peers and UCC teachers contacted by the Globe hadn't yet realized that the uniformed man on the television newscasts was the same teenager who made sure all was quiet in Wedd's boarding house by 10 p.m. The Globe and Mail's report on Williams' background offered virtually no previous incidents to suggest that this rising military star could have been identified as a violent criminal prior to 2007. What is postulated are remote possibilities at best, correlations that seem promising for a moment and then fall apart. In the mid-1980s, Williams studied politics and economics at the University of Toronto's Scarborough Satellite, a campus that was haunted by a series of unsolved rapes at that time. January 1983 editorial in the campus newspaper, The Underground, stated, "Last Tuesday, a student was attacked in the parking lot, dragged into the valley, and raped. This is the first reported attack. Something will have to be done to alleviate fears, even if it does cost the college a lot of money." There have been no suggestions from the Ontario Provincial Police that Colonel Williams has been linked in any way to those attacks, but they have said that, given the allegations, they will be tracing his steps over the years. The only known morsel of concerning behavior in Russell Williams prior to 2007 is a strange habit from his college days. Dr. Margot C. Watt, professor of psychology at St. Francis Xavier University in Nova Scotia, Canada, explained this habit in her case study of Williams, which appeared in her book, Explorations in Forensic Psychology, Cases in Criminal and Abnormal Behavior. In the aforementioned case study, Dr. Watt writes, "During his time at university, Williams had little contact with family members, rarely talked about personal matters, and appeared to others to be rather lonely. Despite seeming lonely, Williams garnered a reputation for being a bit of a prankster, someone who liked to hide in closets for extended periods of time, only to jump out and surprise unsuspecting roommates. Simi has also demonstrated some stealth in assembling and disassembling door locks as required for his pranks." Ultimately, there were a few possibilities that may have contributed to Williams' mental status, but none that are clear red flags. He had also suffered from chronic pain and sought prescription drugs for treatment. There were familial and relationship problems in his life, but none of those factors suggest a discernible cause for his actions. Dr. Watt seems as unsure as anyone else as to what exactly made Russell Williams cross the threshold from fantasy to home invasion and theft to sexual assault and rape, and finally, to murder. Apparently, during one of his sexual assaults, Williams reportedly told his victim that he was attacking her so that he could move on with his life. What triggered Williams' criminal behavior? Prescription drug use related to his chronic pain? Changes in his relationship status? Increasing isolation from his wife? Increasing stress? Emotional turmoil? Or was it a combination of all of the above, which at some point reached a critical mass of stress, which effectively and irretrievably exceeded his capacity to cope, or more precisely, his ability to maintain control any longer? Williams has declined interviews on the subject, so for the foreseeable future, it doesn't seem like any further light is going to be shined on that subject. There simply is no definitive answer. Fortunately, Ontario Provincial Police Detective Sergeant Jim Smith isn't particularly interested in Russell Williams' background at the moment. Right now, he's hell-bent on one thing: finding out what happened to Jessica Lloyd. Her disappearance is making headlines, and forensic teams are relentlessly working to solve the case. Police have searched the area around Jessica Lloyd's home for any evidence of foul play. What they found are boot prints in the yard and tire marks in a nearby field. They also have eyewitness reports of the vehicle that pulled into that field. This, as it turns out, is all they need. Police quickly step up a checkpoint to groom vehicles for tire treads that match marks found near Jessica Lloyd's home. Russell Williams is stopped at that checkpoint. The tread on his SUV matches that of the vehicle which had recently been near Lloyd's home. And just like that, Williams is being called in for questioning.
You ever been interviewed by the police in a room like this before?
I have never been interviewed like this.
Oh, no? Okay.
No.
Let's get this. All right. Well, again, Russell, I appreciate you coming in. An investigation like this, I mean, I'm sure you can appreciate it's been big news, especially down Belleville way. And, you know, obviously our approach to cases like this is that we don't give up on somebody being alive until we get evidence that they're not. So because of that, we're treating Jessica's case as an emergent situation, obviously.
Yeah.
So we're fast forwarding things that we might normally take our time with. And that's why we're here on a Sunday afternoon.
Sure.
So again, I appreciate it.
No problem.
We're going to do a pretty thorough interview today.
Okay.
I'm a big coffee guy. I don't know if you're a coffee guy or
I am
not,
a
but I
coffee
didn't
guy,
want to drink
actually,
in front of you. So
No, I appreciate that.
I have a simple rule when I talk to people. It's I'm sure you're the same way. I treat everybody with respect. I don't know. I ask if they do the same for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by going through what your rights are. Okay? Just like everybody else. Okay. Have you ever read your rights before?
No.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it on TV a whole bunch of times, but that's usually the American version. So I'll go over with you briefly. Okay. Basically, in Canada, as you know, I'm sure, is we all have our rights guaranteed under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Right.
Okay. Now, Russell, just to avoid any confusion, because people do get confused when they're talked to by the police, is that you're obviously not under arrest here today. Okay.
Yep.
Anytime you feel you want to leave here, you feel free to do so. The door's not locked. Teresa will walk you down the lobby anytime you want. Okay.
It's certainly possible that Williams could just have the same kind of tires as the potential abductor. This is circumstantial evidence for the moment. But if he happens to own a pair of boots that match up with the print found at Jessica Lloyd's yard, the evidence against Williams will jump from circumstantial to damning in a nanosecond. It's hard to say why. Maybe he just isn't thinking. Russell Williams actually wears the same pair of boots to his own interrogation that he wore the night he murdered Jessica Lloyd. He's made Detective Sergeant Jim Smith's job easier. Regardless, Smith's interrogation of Russell Williams is methodical and precise. He purposefully mimics Williams' body language at times to project empathy. He also keeps an amicable tone while questioning a deeply violent subject for approximately 10 hours. Most importantly, Detective Smith procures every horrid detail of Williams' unimaginable secret life right from the source. At first, Williams projects a touch of arrogance. His attitude says, "I obviously had nothing to do with these crimes, but I'm happy to help with the investigation any way I can." As Detective Smith gradually lays his cards on the table, revealing ace after ace, Russell Williams' tone changes considerably.
You seem like a very intelligent person. Well, I'll just ask you this straight out. Given the types of crimes you're investigating, do you get much chance to watch television shows, CSI, things like that?
I do watch, I prefer Law and Order, but I do watch CSI occasionally, yes.
Okay. So you have an idea of, obviously, the forensic capabilities, things like that are out there. What would you be willing to give me today to help me move past you in this investigation?
What do you need?
Well, would you be willing to supply things like fingerprints, blood samples,
Sure.
things like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Footwear impressions?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's what we're gonna ask you to do.
Okay.
All right. Now we have a process we have to go through to do that.
Okay.
And for the blood sample, I don't take the blood sample. We have specially trained officers that are trained to do that.
Okay.
I'm going to step out and make sure they're still available.
Can I assume you're going to be discreet?
It's possible. Yeah.
Because, this would have a very significant impact on the base if they thought you thought I did this.
Well, bottom line, Russell, that's one of the reasons we're here on a Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
It's certainly one of the things that went into our decision to give you a call at home today and see if we could deal with this today.
Okay.
So, okay. You've had some time to think about things. This is a significant investigation, as you can
Absolutely.
well imagine. that DNA is going to be significant in our investigation, both quite possibly to help you, quite possibly to help us.
Understood.
I don't know yet. I don't know what the result is yet. And I'll go back to the example I gave you because it's a very similar issue, I think. And you talked about the idea of discretion here. Okay. You talked about the idea that I think hopefully you appreciate the fact of how we approached you here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And essentially, we have no issues with that. Okay. We talked recently about the whole idea of any unusual sex acts in your history. But another thing that can often happen in cases like this is that people become concerned about things like extramarital affairs, indiscretions along those lines. Is there any contact that you may have had with any of those 4 women that you may not want your wife to be aware of? Anything like that that we should know about to try and explain why, if your DNA is found, it would help us understand why it may be there.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
CSI officers were looking around her property that they identified a set of tire tracks to the north of her property. Looks as if the vehicle left the road and drove along the north tree line of Jessica Lloyd's property. Okay. They took they examined those tire tracks, and they have contacts in the tire business. Obviously, tire tracks are a major source of evidence for us.
Sure.
Shortly after this investigation started, they identified those tires as the same tires on your Pathfinder.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. One of the other things that they do to try and identify the type of vehicle that may have left those tires, well, is they do 2 things. They talk to witnesses. Okay. There was a female police officer that actually drove by that location that evening and recalls seeing an SUV type vehicle in the field to the north of Jessica Lloyd's house. Consistent with a Pathfinder. Okay. Could maybe consistent with other things, but consistent with a Pathfinder. And they, what they also do to try and identify the type of the vehicle is they look at what they call the wheelbase width. Okay, because different vehicles, different makes, models have wheelbase width. So they can take those 2 sets of tire tracks, measure the distance between them. Okay, and determine what the width is.
Sure.
And then they can enter that into a vehicle database, and it will spit out the types of vehicles. Okay. Your Pathfinder's wheelbase width is very, very close to the width of the tires that were left in that field. Okay. Do you have any recollection at all of being off that road?
No, it was not off the road, no.
Okay. Electronic devices.
No.
Let's step out and see how things are going. Okay. I mean, it is a Sunday, but there's probably 60, 70 people working on this file, so there's a lot of things happening.
Sure.
So let me go out and see what's happening, and then I'll come back in and we'll hopefully continue. Okay. I told you when I came in here that I'm going to treat you with respect, and I've asked you to do the same for me. We talked about the whole idea of how we've approached you here. Okay. The trying to be as discreet as possible. Okay. But the problem is, Russell, is every time I walk out of this room, there's another issue that comes up. Okay. And it's not issues that point away from you; it's issues that point at you. Okay. And I want you to see what I mean. All right. This is the footwear impression of the person who approached. You're in a situation where you're pretty much in the area of fingerprints. Okay. And essentially, what we're talking about here is, especially when you start adding in other pieces of information that support an investigative position. A photocopy of the boot that you took off your foot just a little while ago. Okay. Now, I'm not an expert in footwear impressions, so I rely on the experts. But you take a look at this print. These are identical. Your vehicle drove up the side of Jessica Lloyd's house. Your boots walked to the back of Jessica Lloyd's house on the evening of the 28th and 29th of January. Okay. You want discretion. We need to have some honesty, okay? Because this is getting out of control really fast, Russell. Okay, really, really fast. This is getting beyond my control. All right, I came in here a few hours ago and I called you the way I called you today because I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt. But you and I both know you were at Jessica Lloyd's house, and I need to know why.
I don't know what to say. It's
Well, you need to explain it, because this is the other problem we're having, Russell, okay? Again, these decisions are made by me. Right now, there's a search warrant being executed at your residence in Ottawa, okay? So your wife now knows what's going on. There's a search warrant being executed at your residence in Tweed, and your vehicle's been seized, okay? You and I both know they're going to find evidence that links you to these situations. Okay. You and I both know that the unknown offender, male, on Marie Trance Comeau's body is going to be matched to you, quite possibly before the evening's over. Okay. This is a major investigation. The Center of Forensic Science is on call 24 hours a day helping us with this. Your opportunity to take some control here and to have some explanation that anybody is going to believe is quickly expiring. Okay? We're applying, the investigators now applying for a warrant to search your office. Right? These aren't decisions that we can say yes or no to. This is the practical steps in an investigation like this. And Russell, listen to me for a second, okay? When that evidence comes in, when that DNA match, when that phone rings and somebody knocks on this door, your credibility is gone. Again, don't take this wrong, okay? But you can see, if you step outside this room in your mind and imagine how people are going to view you, okay? If the truth comes out after the clear evidence is presented to you, when you finally go, okay, I'm screwed now, what are we going to do? You know there's only one option. What other option is there?
what's the option?
Well, I don't think you want the cold-blooded psychopath option. Okay? Because don't get me wrong, I've met guys who actually kind of enjoyed the notoriety, got off on it. I don't see that in you. If I saw that in you, I wouldn't be back in here talking to you, quite frankly. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you got me fooled. I don't know. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's a huge search still underway, and it'll continue. It'll continue until her body's found. Once that happens, then I don't know what other cards you would have to play. What are we going to do?
Williams is about to succumb to the impossible situation he's now dealing with. Why fight it? Detective Smith might be feigning his personable demeanor simply to better procure information, but he's clearly not lying about how much evidence police now have against Williams. It takes a while for him to get started, but once he lets the words escape his lips, details of his secret life come pouring out.
Is Jessica somewhere we can find her easily? Like, is this something where I can make a call and tell somebody to go to a location and they're going to find her, or is this something where we have to go and take a walk?
It's hard to believe this is happening.
Why is that? Why is it hard to believe? Chris, is there anything you want from me? Is there anything you want me to explain? Is there something missing that you're struggling with that I can shed some light on for you?
I'm struggling with how upset my wife is. Yeah.
Russ, what are you looking for?
I was concerned that they're tearing apart my wife's brand new house.
So am I. But if nobody tells them what's there and what's not, they don't have any choice. Computers will be brought to Microsoft in California. They'll be picked apart. You can't erase things from computers. It doesn't happen. I'm sure you've seen that. I'm sure that's pretty common knowledge these days. It just. Did we talk?
I want to minimize the impact on my wife.
So do I.
So how do we do that?
Well, we start by telling the truth.
Okay.
Okay. So where is she?
You got a map?
Is she close to where she lives? I've got maps of that general area.
I'm not sure if you give me a map of that covers Caladar down to the highway and over to Tweed and south. I'll show you.
Okay. Is she close to a road?
Yep.
All right. Is it something where is she buried, or is she somewhere where if you walk there you would fairly easily see her?
It's here.
Okay. So she's south of 7. Okay, I'm right back. How long has she been there for?
A little over a week. I'll tell you where the membership cards are.
Where are they?
They're in the house there, but
In Ottawa?
yeah.
Whereabouts?
Some in the camera bag, which they would have found in my office.
Mm-hmm.
And when you walk into the office on the left side, there's a desk of drawers, set of drawers, like a filing cabinet.
And whose images are on those cards?
Well, I've erased them, but I expect you'll be able to draw images of Jessica and I.
What about Marie?
There may be images on there as well.
And the 2 women from September?
Yep. All right.
Why don't we start with Jessica? How does that start for you?
I saw her in her house on her treadmill Wednesday night, I guess. And I noticed she wasn't there Thursday. So I got into the house to look around. Then left. Noticed she'd come home. So I went back in through the back patio door while she was sleeping.
Okay.
So I woke her up. Didn't hit her. She only hit her once. Friday night.
Okay.
Well, so I raped her in her house, and then I took her to the car and took her to Tweed, and spent the day in Tweed. And then I hit her as we were walking. She thought we were leaving. Hit her on the back of the head.
Okay.
Anything in particular?
Well, what did the hit on the back of the head do?
Well, I was surprised that her skull gave way. She was there and immediately unconscious. And I strangled her.
Okay. What did you hit her with?
Flashlight
Okay. In the house or outside the house?
in the house.
Where in the house did this happen?
In the main portion, just in front of the fireplace.
What do you mean they'll find signs of it?
Oh, there was quite a bit of blood. I'd expected to knock her out, but obviously generated a lot of blood.
What did she bleed onto?
The floor. It's just tile floor.
Okay. Did you clean it up, or did you?
I wiped it up. I know it'll be easily spotted.
What makes you think that? Like, if I walked in that house right now, would I see it?
You wouldn't see it, not at all, but, you know, the right science will show it, I'm sure.
Okay. So when that happened, did she have clothes on, or was she naked? Or?
She was dressed.
Okay. So when we find her, is she going to have those clothes on too?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Russell Williams goes on to describe the murder of Mary Franz Kumu, as well as every other instance of assault, rape, and burglary he's committed. Williams is arrested, of course. He's charged with first-degree murder, sexual assault, forcible confinement, and breaking and entering, all to which he pleads guilty. 4 days after Williams' guilty plea, Ontario Superior Court Justice Robert F. Scott sentences Williams to 2 terms of life imprisonment, with no possibility of parole, for 25 years. Williams' wife quickly files for divorce. The Canadian forces strip Williams of his rank, revoking all of his medals before cutting them into pieces, and then having his uniform burned. Naturally, a made-for-TV movie is produced about Williams for the Lifetime Network. Ironically, the film's title of An Officer and a Murderer sounds exactly like what a parody of a Lifetime original movie would be called. Shows like Dateline NBC, 48 Hours, and I Survived air specials about Williams' case. He's not quite Charles Manson, but it's fair to say Russell Williams has leveled as high as a murderer can go. He's famous. Was that his plan all along? Unlikely, but it's doubtful any of the crimes he committed were part of an initial plan. His crimes happened gradually, as Williams pushed a little further each time to see if he could still get away with them. One day, Williams looked around and realized there was a well-mannered detective staring at him and preparing to put him away for the rest of his life. It was then that he probably wondered how, exactly, he let things get so out of hand. But he didn't fight the situation. He just took it as it came. It seems likely he feels the same way about his fame as a murderer and rapist. Maybe being a famous monster wasn't part of his initial plan, but it'll do. Today, Russell Williams is currently serving his sentence at the Port Cartier Maximum Security Facility in Quebec, Canada. He is 55 years old.